but that's okay. Everybody is learning in these days and times to be very agile and be very nimble and learn how to pivot. So long as you don't give up, you keep pushing forward and forging ahead, you will be fine. And so we are in the Business Blueprint 2.0. This is your man, Big Stu, Scott Stewart, or Professor Stewart. It really, really does depend on how you know me. But nevertheless, today I am very grateful to be able to bring a gentleman that I truly admire, who has been a savior in my life, Mr. Eric McLeod, who is the founder and CEO of Hubris Global Wealth Management. My personal testimony is that this man has helped me to have a different relationship with my money, personally and professionally. I was drowning, had no real financial responsibility until about a year ago, almost a year ago now, that I met Mr. McLeod, Eric McLeod, and he has single-handedly been responsible for helping me change my relationship with money. And now what I mean is, I would, earn $20,000 and spend $20,001, and that just was not a recipe for success. And so I asked him to come on today to share some of his tips, some of his expertise. But before we get into that, let me just give Mr. McLeod an opportunity to kind of introduce himself. The format for this is I'm going to ask him some questions. He's going to give us some answers, and then he has prepared an amazing presentation for us today. I'm not going to steal his thunder. I'm going to let him bring it to it, but I've already looked over it, and it is worth its weight in gold. And so, Mr. McLeod, Eric McLeod, welcome to the Business Blueprint 2.0 this morning. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I know you and I kind of talked about doing this for a while, so it's good to get this out there to the world. And yes, I am the CEO and founder of Hubris. Hubris exists to make sure people have access. Years ago, I started to realize that only certain groups of people had the access that they needed to build generational wealth. And I dedicated my life to make sure that people who are serious about building generational wealth, especially people like us who are entrepreneurs, that they have access to the talent, the strategies, the systems, the same things that the Fortune 500 companies have access to and the ultra wealthy. We're all on that path to becoming ultra wealthy, but we need resources to get there. And so that's why Hubris exists. And our whole thing is we want you to leverage our audacity to build wealth.
And you say it so eloquently, so smoothly. And I believe you, have believed in you. I don't mind. I hope you don't mind if I tell the story of kind of how we met, which kind of solidified how I viewed you in my perspective. Bringing up who introduced us, if you will. So, ladies and gentlemen, what happened? He and I have a mutual acquaintance, more of an acquaintance of mine than of his. But listen, I put out on Facebook one day, I'm looking for somebody that can help me with manage my money, and a young woman who's a professional colleague of mine reached out and said, you need to contact this guy, Eric. And he's my ex-husband, but I wouldn't trust anyone else with my money or with helping me with this conversation than this guy. And I thought that spoke volumes, that an ex-wife would say something so highly regarded about her ex-husband, is that, hey, no matter our relationship went the route it went, whatever, but this is the man you need to talk to. And once I heard that, I was all in, and her words ring true. I do believe that I have the capacity to generate wealth. I have the audacity to believe it. So I've been bought in ever since. Eric, can you tell us a little bit about your experience, kind of, and people will want to know, well, they're going to ask themselves, well, who is this guy? What has he done to earn all of this respect from Scott Steward and to be who he claims to be today. So can you just share a little bit about your experience?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my experiences have started really just being in the trenches. Somebody like my ex-wife Beulah to recommend me as a high honor. I feel like the reason why they're willing to do that, people are willing to do that, is because I've taken out that time to sit down and work with people one-on-one and really provide education as we're going throughout the process. And so it's one thing for somebody to say, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do the other thing. But it's another thing, I feel, when somebody actually takes the time to tell you why. And I know you and I have spent time on that as well. I'm dealing with people like yourself who are very high-level professionals. They're leaders in their own regard. And so they're not just going to do something just because you said it. And so that education piece is what forms a bond between myself and those that I'm working with, because they're like, wow, okay, now I understand why. And I can use this information or this knowledge going into the future. I've worked, in my career, I've done a lot of different things. So I've done a lot in the real estate world, as far as real estate development. Yes, I'm a financial advisor, so I've dealt with all of those things. I'm one of the co-founders of the Greater Inglewood Chamber of Commerce, which is very interesting. It was a very interesting experience. And I am also a co-founder of the Greater Inglewood Community Development Corporation that a lot of you might be familiar with. So I've taken all of those experiences and packaged them together into the solutions that I offer people with just a very broad perspective on, how do you solve problems? Usually when I sit down with someone, the first thing that we want to try to figure out is like, what is the problem that you're attempting to solve? And then we kind of work backwards from there.
And that's exactly why I think you and I have resonated so well. I'll say it again. I have bought into it. I see that it has worked. Very transparently, I've shared tears with this man. We've been back and forth. I've given some pushback. This work is necessary. His intellect is, stars above a lot of the folks that are currently in my network. So I'm glad to have you in my network, Eric. You know what you're talking about. You are proven. And again, I'm very thankful that you have allowed yourself to share some of your time with the folks that are in this group. And you are also in this group as well. Yes, and so I appreciate that. Yes. So before we get into your presentation, because it is almost time for that, a lot of folks, and this was, you and I haven't discussed this part of the conversation, but our government has passed at least a $2 trillion stimulus package, and has delayed or pushed back the tax filing date. I believe now it's like June 15th or something. And so each adult American is going to get, somewhere around $1,200 approximately. Maybe not every single adult American, but most of us will get somewhere around $1,200 or more. Yeah. Any suggestions for folks about how they can parlay that, although we still have bills and things like that? How might you suggest, or what might you do with your stimulus dollars?
Well, this is really a good time and this is the work that you and I have done together, to buckle down on the budgeting and the long-term forecasting. So, one of the things I would suggest is, before you even get the stimulus check, just really being clear about what the next 3 to 4 months look like. What are all the expenses that you have out there? What are some bills that you may have to pay that might have been out there for a while? So, for example, you might have a dental bill that's got to be paid now before it goes to collections or something like that. All of those things should be taken into consideration when you're thinking about, okay, what should I be doing with the stimulus check? If you're somebody out there who's already doing that type of thing and you're on point in terms of your budget, this is a great time to be thinking about possibly investing a little deeper in the stock market. You listen to these guys like Warren Buffett and these individuals who invest regularly. A lot of people view this as a time to get a bargain on certain stocks. So think about maybe, and I'm not making any recommendations, but just think about Apple, Coca-Cola, Microsoft. So all of these stocks are lower than they normally would be per share. And you ask yourself, okay, this company has been around for hundreds of years, possibly. Is this a good time to get a bargain on a Coca-Cola stock? Is this a time to get a bargain on AT&T stock or whatever it is? And so getting a $1,200 check and investing in the stock market, you could get a true, you might be able to triple your money down the road depending on which stocks you pick. So just something to think about.
And I appreciate you saying you're not making any recommendations. You were simply giving an example.
Absolutely.
We don't want anyone to say you said invest in these companies and it didn't pan out. No recommendations were given. But I do, and I've heard that it's funny because I heard some folks say, don't buy no stocks now. They too low. And that flies in the face of convention of what I was taught. It's like, if I like Gucci, and Gucci is having a flash sale, go get all the Gucci you can get right now. This price is low. Because when it's low, the theory is that what's low must rise, and go get it now. So that's a very good concept to explore. Folks, go do your own research. You'll get a chance to connect with Eric here in this group. And if you want to have some more conversations and see if he can guide you or point you in the right direction or even help you directly, he's the man. So now I'm going to turn it over to you now fully. I'm going to step back. I'm going to pull up this presentation and I'm going to let you have it. I'm going to, I'll control it for you.
Okay.
If you like, let me make sure that I can get that. Let me make sure that I have it. Oh yeah, here we go. I'll control it for you. Just tell me when the.
Okay. Yeah, let's do this in kind of a conversational format. So I know you have a lot of experience in this area as well. You've counseled a lot of different startups. So maybe we can kind of do this in a very conversational manner. So, we talked about the top 10 ways to attract investors to your startup. And the way I look at this conversation, Scott, it's really, a lot of these things, I don't think it's anything that someone hasn't heard before, but it's just kind of putting it into a different context, maybe a reminder, right? But also just looking at it in a very common sense way. So if you're the person, so let's step outside of this and say, we're the investor and we're looking for businesses to put capital into. Okay. These are 10 things that you might be thinking about as the investor before you put your money into a startup. And the first thing that we had on here, if you can go to the first slide, is, and this is probably something that a lot of people do know, but let's talk about this. If you are an investor, wouldn't you want to put your money into a systems-based business versus something where there is no system? And when we're thinking about systems, we're talking about something that has a successful model already. So you know how people use, a lot of times they'll use franchises like McDonald's, Subway. How do you view that? How would you view that in terms of as an investor? If somebody came to you and said, Scott, I'm about to pick up a Subway and I need some capital, would you consider it?
Absolutely. Yeah, anything that, and you have it already on here, anything that can be duplicated or easily duplicated, right? But if you don't, and I get that, man, that's for all of us startup entrepreneurs, man. Listen, I have been working on this myself, and I have been pushing this #1 agenda. That's why when I saw your presentation, I was like, this is spot on. Look, you gotta have a system that operates without you. And you got to create that. As a matter of fact, I was having a conversation with one of my business partners this morning, because we have a client in building their website that was concerned about if something happens to one of us, will he still get service on managing his website? And we were going over the systems that's in place should either one of us physically not be available. So
Right.
Is that system, strong? Does it have legs that it can stand on? And can it be duplicated, right? Is that what you're...
That is exactly right. And, sometimes you can pull systems from unrelated businesses. You could have a Subway model, but you might be a lawyer, for example. You might want to, sometimes the systems are there for examination to see what can I pull out of this well-running system. Let's think about Amazon. So Amazon is definitely a very systems-driven business. You and I are service providers. We can look at Amazon and kind of see, okay, what systems is Amazon using that I can incorporate into my business to attract an investor? And so there's so many different uses to systems when you're putting together a business.
This is good. We're talking about the 10 ways to attract investors to your startup. And the number one that we have here that Eric has come up with is systems. So first things you want to think about is systems. Let's go to number 2, where you talk about this story.
Tell a great story. Man, that's so powerful. We see a lot of content on social media around telling a great story for your business. But yeah, it's a big deal because ultimately somebody's buying into you as the individual before they start thinking about your business. You're the first thing that they're going to see. You're going to be the first information that they hear about the business. And to me, it starts with your elevator pitch. So before I start looking at your business plan or anything else, I will have hopefully heard your pitch, your 60-second pitch as to why I should even be interested in your company in the first place. And yes, that story needs to be very engaging and draw people in so that they are interested enough to look further into your business. So what's your story?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think a lot of folks, what would you say, and maybe we can circle back to this one later, but some people start digging a little bit too deep, thinking that their story has to be the story of them being homeless or the story of them being on the street or no education. And some people start to overreach as far as engaging in that story. So do you have any suggestions or tips right now off the cuff about how to maybe formulate that story? What makes for an engaging story to an investor?
Yeah, my main tip would be just, we're all unique as individuals. And so just trying to really remember why you started this business in the first place. Like, I'll give you an example for Hubris. I was actually in a corporate firm and I was in a stall, using the restroom. And I heard a conversation from 2 partners that were running the firm about annuities and college planning. And I had just finished a degree in finance and I didn't know what they were talking about. So I'm in the stall. They don't even know that I'm there. And they're just having a casual conversation. And I'm sitting there a bit embarrassed and ashamed because I'm like, how do I have this advanced degree in finance? And I don't know what these people are talking about at all. I don't know what an annuity is. College planning is very, I had a new child at the time. And that embarrassment propelled me to dig deeper and ultimately start a business around finance and business. But that was an encounter or a situation that happened to me that was very real, but ended up pushing me along a really long journey to be where I am today. So that's a real story. It's authentic.
Yeah.
Some might find it engaging, but that's the reason why I'm here. What's your story? What was that real event that took place that drove you to start this business in the first place? Communicate that to the investor.
That makes perfect sense. So we're talking about the 10 ways to attract investors to your startup. Number 1 was to have some great systems in place. Number 2 is tell a great story. Let's move into number 3, investor-friendly business structure. Can you talk a little bit about that?
This is a big deal. So the structure of the business is also something, yes, we will be looking at. So Some structures are more friendly than others. The main thing as an investor that you're thinking about, so just think about you and I again, Scott, we're thinking about investing in one of our buddies' businesses. One of the first things you're going to be looking at is, am I shielded from any potential liabilities? That's always going to be at the top of the list. Are there any tax advantages that I can take advantage of in this particular structure as it's already set up? These are some conversations. These are some of the first initial conversations that investors are going to be looking at when they're thinking about investing in your business structure. So say you have a sole proprietorship versus a person who has a C corp. Well, obviously the sole proprietorship is going to have more risk built into it versus having a corporate structure where you have the corporate veil and all these other things. And so an investor is not trying to sit there and educate you on how to structure your business. They're going to expect that you've already worked through that due diligence on your own, and you're coming to the table with that friendly structure and you're ready to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had a unit in the Business Blueprint 2.0 about legal structures, and we went over that. And the one takeaway, if you didn't hear it, folks, is get you a legal structure that protects your personal assets and helps to minimize liability of all stakeholders in your organization.
Yes.
And so making sure that you're on top of that and not just doing LLCs, and not saying that you shouldn't, but not just doing it because you heard that was the cheapest route to go. That's not going to be as attractive to an investor who can sit with someone else who can say, I decided to go with this legal structure because I thought of all the tax implications and the risk associated with these structures, right?
That's right. And let's talk about LLCs really quickly. So, I know that's a common structure that people use. Let's talk about the taxation aspect of an LLC. So let's compare it to maybe a C corp. So one of the things you want to think about, whether you're the investor or the person who actually founded the company, is so thinking about when revenue comes in and their profits and they're distributed, you're going to be taxed. If there's an LLC, it's going to go directly to the taxes of the person who's part of the LLC. Versus if you have a C corp, you're only going to be taxed on what it is that you receive. So for example, say you receive dividends from the C corp. That's a taxable event. But prior to that, you're not going to be taxed on anything. And
right.
So as from an investor perspective or the founder, you really want to think about that. Like, when do I want to be taxed on these proceeds as they come into the company?
Right. Very good stuff, man. Very, very good stuff.
Yes, sir.
Very good stuff. So again, we're talking about the 10 ways to attract investors to your business. And we just discussed having an investor-friendly business structure. Number 4. Use sweat equity to build a solid team. Take us through that.
This is one of my favorite ones, Scott. Sweat equity. We hear this all the time. So sweat equity, I think we all know what it is. You're basically allowing somebody to come in and sweat, do some work in order to get some ownership in your company. Why is this important to an investor? If I'm an investor, why do I care if you have sweat equity built into your structure? Well, number one, you want to make sure that all the key management roles are covered. So the founder is typically the CEO of the startup, but then you need a CFO. You need a chief operating officer. You might need somebody that's really good, depending on what type of company you have, at programming. Say you have an education-based company and you have some really good programmers or people who deliver services. As an investor, I want to know that all those roles are covered. But keeping, just being realistic, it's a startup, so you don't have a lot of cash. What's a way to take advantage of the fact that you don't have a lot of cash but still get the roles filled? Sweat equity.
And
it's an easy way.
Yep, giving people ownership in exchange for putting in that work, if you will, right?
That's right. That's right. And as far as from the perspective of the person that you're courting to be part of the sweat equity structure, so you want to get the top talent that you can find, and what you're selling to them is the future. Like, look,
Right.
This company is very innovative. We have a blue ocean strategy, which is just a strategy where we're swimming somewhere different. We don't really have the competition that other people have because we're totally swimming in different waters. And you are going to make money because of this. And so you're selling the future to these people that you want to leverage their talent and expertise to build out your C-suite.
Yeah. Hey, listen, this conversation ain't for folks. We're not trying to convince folks to do this work. We're not trying to motivate people to do this work. This work that we're talking about is for the folks who already know the value and who are already motivated. This ain't the motivational roundtable discussion about this work. This is for folks who are already in and who just needs a little reminders or might find something that they didn't understand or pay attention to before. Listen, I know a lot of folks are, because I'm in it I'm getting my C-suite together. We don't have cash to pay, salaries that match a market value salaries right now. And a lot of folks sometimes are coming to say, well, I need to get paid this. Look, we're not talking to you for this one, right? This is for folks who can see the value in the future and understand the concept of sweat equity. If I have to convince you of why, of what this is when you're building something and why we don't have the cash up front to pay you, then you probably are not ready for that conversation anyway, and probably don't even deserve to be on the team. So again, this is for folks who are ready, who understand it. We're not trying to motivate you. We're not even trying to convince you. We're giving you what is going to work to get your business from where it is to where you desire it to be, which is to have investors and be thinking about your exit plan, your exit strategy. All right.
I like that, Scott, because when you really think about it, the people that you're approaching for your sweat equity, to be in your sweat equity team, so to speak, they would have to have an investor's mindset, like you were alluding to. Like, they have to be able to see and understand return on investment.
Right.
So I'm investing my time, but this company, I feel, is strong enough that I'm going to get a strong return on that time investment down the road. So yes, a certain mindset of individual that you will be seeking. They will even understand this type of opportunity.
And that person is also probably going to ask you, even though you're offering sweat equity or they're offering sweat equity, they're probably going to ask you, hey, what systems do you have in place for this organization? What's the legal structure that you have? They're going to be asking you that those are going to be like just basic questions.
That's right. They definitely will do that.
That's right. All right, so let's go to number 5 here. Number 5 here says what I just talked about. Look, what is your exit strategy? Provide an exit strategy for investors. Take us through it.
This is important. I mean, as we both know, any investor is not looking to tie up their money forever, right? Investors are trying to get the best use of their money at all times. And so that means there's time-based events that they're going to be paying attention to. So just looking at this in a very common sense manner, when am I getting my money back, right? If we loan our buddy $20, the first conversation is, okay, well, when am I getting my money back and how much are you going to pay me back on that $20? The same thing exists here. So an investor is looking for the company they're looking for an event that's going to trigger them getting their money back. So we're thinking about IPO. So an initial public offer. So the company was a privately owned company. Now we're going to take it public so that we can access public funds. That's an event that's going to trigger me getting my money back as an investor. A merger. Many times we start companies and we figure out, you know what? I don't think we can do this on our own. We're going to find somebody that's in a similar business that we can complement one another, and we're going to merger and come together and do business together, which happens all the time. From an investment perspective, yeah, I love that. That's an event that's going to trigger me getting my money back. And so just keeping in mind as the founder and CEO, what events can I forecast for my investor to get their money back and when?
Yeah.
So attaching a time frame to that, because it's one thing for me to say, Scott, we're going to take this company public and you're going to get your money back. But the first thing Scott is going to say probably is, when? When are you going public? Yeah. And hey, we might not meet the deadline, but Scott has an idea. Okay, hey, we're supposed to take this company public in a year.
Right.
So that's something for us to be tracking so I can get my money back in that return that I was pitched in the beginning.
And that's I'm glad you used that and then that year as part of your example, because many investors are not necessarily going to let you hold on to their money for 5 years. They're generally looking for a year, 2 years, less than 3 years for sure. But that's less than 3 years, you got to have a plan for less than 3 years going in the door. But like to your point, you can adjust along the way with open lines and strong of communication and strong, clear communication. But there has to be some sort of short window on the front end of when you anticipate through a clear plan of action of getting investors their money back.
Exactly. And let's think about some common things that we have all experienced, like in banking, for example. So why the investor is so concerned with these short time frames. So think about, the CDs that you got in the past, you're locked into an interest rate. It's the same thing for an investor. The longer you have the investor's money, they're basically locked into that whatever return you told them that you were going to give them in the beginning. So say you told them, hey, I'm going to give you we're forecasting an 8% return on the money that you put up, you contribute as capital. The longer I hold your money, now there's possibly an opportunity cost because I could take that same money and get a higher than 8% return somewhere else. And so that's what the investor is thinking about. Look, I need to get my money out of here because the longer one entity holds it, the less money or the less return I'm going to get over time. So I need to move the money somewhere else.
And so call it what you want, people. Investors might be greedy. And I don't even think it's greedy. It's just really you told them something or you plan to tell them something and they are holding you accountable to that. It's not even really greed. It's just, I'm an investor. I want to make the most out of my money as I possibly can to sustain myself and my family.
That's right.
That's what this is all about. Now, what do you say? And I know we're getting short on time a little bit here, but I don't want to necessarily just rush it for the sake of rushing it. But what do you say to some business owners who are like, why would I exit my business? Why would I let somebody buy it? I don't want to sell it. This is my baby. I built this. What would you say to them?
The first thing I would say to them is build a business first and foremost that someone would be interested in purchasing. Whether you want to sell it or not, I'm encouraging you to build something that someone would even purchase in the first place. Then we can get to should you sell it and all of that, which I've had that conversation with many clients. So a lot of people, they don't want to sell their business. Sure, you don't have to, but I would say this, you really want to think about how long do you want to be in this business? So one of the reasons to sell would be I might want to retire. So I'm in a situation personally where I'm building my company, Hubris. I am hoping that my children take over the company, right? And I used to wonder why I would see this in movies all the time. Those movies you see where somebody's built this multi-million-dollar company and the child does not want to be in that business. They want to be an artist or a motorcycle rider, whatever, but they want to do anything but run that business. And you see the parent in the movie, they're very upset and having these arguments with the child. I understand that now. Because I'm looking at my kids, I'm like, one of you all needs to run this business. And they're talking about everything but that.
Everything but
so
that.
If I get to a point where I'm 60 years old and I don't want to run this business anymore, I might have to sell it.
Yeah.
The kids don't want it. They don't want to run it. I haven't found anybody else that has the same vision that I have.
Yeah.
The best thing to do might be to sell it to someone that has the same vision and let them carry it on, and we take the proceeds, and put it up.
Someone you trust in your space.
Someone you trust. Sometimes I've seen where it's a competitor. So even though they were a competitor, you all share the same core values about how to do business, and you end up selling to a competitor because you're like, even though this person was my competitor, I respect how they do business. we have the same shared values, I would rather put it in their hands than someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. The 10 ways to attract investors to your startup. So number 6 says, work with an attorney and or a financial advisor. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, a lot of times I think people, in my experience, they resent the fact sometimes that they have to hire an attorney. And I know that's a conversation that we could probably have at length, but an attorney, a good attorney, besides being able to handle the legal aspects of your business venture, they also could be worth their weight in gold in terms of making professional introductions for you. So, you have a startup, you're looking to expand your network so that you can build your business as quickly as possible. A great lawyer can make those introductions in addition to doing the legal aspects. And you know what? A really solid business attorney, someone that's really seasoned and has got a lot under their belt, could potentially also introduce you to some actual potential investors.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think sometimes, unfortunately, man, attorneys have gotten a bad rap over the years, man, through movies and, the thought of, them charging $450 an hour, $1,000 an hour, but I will say, to your point, if you can find you a good attorney, they will actually save you a ton of money in the long run, not only with helping you to make the right decisions in your business and to insulate and protect your business, but like you just said, to point you in the right direction and making some connections for you in your business as well. I think that's a really good point, as well as with a financial advisor or wealth manager like yourself. You and I have agreed to work together on even my business, and I know you've done this for others in their business. And so I think this is an extremely good point of having an attorney or wealth advisor on your team. I think you mentioned something about, I heard you say that this also would play to an attraction to an investor because they see that you have somebody that's seasoned and professional on your team.
Definitely. Yeah. So you're just creating a deeper bench of professionals to kind of sweeten the pot for an investor. And, even though we all don't necessarily, sometimes people don't want to utilize an attorney, we all know that attorneys and financial advisors are typically held in really high regard. So yeah, from an investor's point of view, 2 great additions to the team.
Absolutely. Now we're going to go into point 7. Give me 1 second here. Here we go. We're going to go into point 7 here, which is the business plan. Build a solid business plan. Talk to us about that, Eric.
Yeah, this is one of the most exciting areas. So the business plan that we hear so much about in the media and just through people having a number of different conversations. I have my own thoughts and opinions about what makes a successful business plan, and I'm sure everyone has their own opinion. What I would say, though, is in my experience, the best business plans, especially when thinking about from the investor's perspective, is going to be something that's actually pushing the business forward. And so, a lot of times I'll talk to people and they'll say, well, people don't really read the business plan. The investor probably won't read the business plan, and they probably won't read it. But what they will do is be observing how you're conducting business. And if you have a well fleshed out business plan, they'll be able to observe you doing business at a very high level, and they'll see that you're actually working through phases to get to where the business needs to go, and that everything is coming from a very structured approach that was addressed in the business plan.
I tend to agree with you on that. When I'm working with folks on their business plans, my main objective is to ensure that their business plan has solid legs and is, 1, not only viable, but 2, is profitable, right?
Definitely.
Right.
And, the other thing I want to say about the business plan is, a really good business plan is going to ask those tough questions up front I've done business plans with people before with clients, and we figured out, hey, we don't really have a viable business here. Yeah. And so you want to get people in your network that you really trust and respect, that have shown and proven that they're good in business. You want them to look at that business plan and really give you some solid feedback and ask you those questions that you may not want to hear, but there's something that you want to get vetted on the front end versus being in front of your actual investor and having those unanswered questions hanging out there.
Yeah, this is right in alignment with getting investors to, pay attention to our business. And if you don't have a business plan, who's going to take you seriously anyway? Just straight up, right? Sure. And so if you're going to do a business plan, it's cool to do a one-pager to start to flesh out the thoughts. But eventually you need to get a solid business plan, because it's going to help give you the path to your own success in your own business as well, right?
Absolutely. Just like the name of your group on Facebook, it's a blueprint. And sometimes I feel like people may not view it that way, but that's all it should be, is a blueprint to setting up and sustaining, not building, like you said earlier. The goal is not to just bring the business into existence. You want to sustain it. And so a well-crafted business plan definitely aids in having a sustainable business.
Yeah. And then once you get that business plan, Eric, what do you suggest folks do with it from there?
So now it's time to start thinking about getting in front of the folks that have the money. So number 8 here is entering pitch competitions.
Yeah.
And I look at pitch competitions like this. I don't know if we have any boxers out there, but there's a difference between you standing in the corner and shadow boxing. You could do that and you can look real smooth and everything, but then there's something else when you get in the ring and you actually start getting hit. And that's how I look at pitch competitions. You're going from shadow boxing to actually jumping in the ring with some active participants who are going to question that business plan, and they're going to hit you and they might beat you up a little bit, but you walk away that much more, you're stronger, and your business plan is that much more sustainable because now you have some active feedback.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very strong point. Have you ever yourself, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I kind of do. Have you ever yourself been in a pitch competition?
I have never been in a pitch competition. That's interesting, because I've helped so many other people prepare to enter pitch competitions and create their pitch decks, but I have not yet entered a pitch competition. No.
Yeah, man, I have a quick story, man. Kind of how I got my, claim to fame, helping a number of students prepare for business plans and business plan competitions. And my students were winning left and right all over the country, high school students at the time. And I had never entered into my a business plan pitch competition until like 2015. And man, I got the gall, got the audacity to go and enter into a competition, and actually won first place in the competition. And the second one was just a few months ago, and actually won that competition as well. So my point is, to your point, take that plan, enter it into a competition. It gives you the legs, the actual feeling, the confidence to practice talking about your business, practice getting in front of folks who are going to give you some critical feedback about your business, and just to give you the full experience. So I hope that you think about going into a competition for yourself even one day, sometime in the near future.
That would be fun. And the great thing about these pitch competitions is you could actually walk away with some money. So you got people that are not, there's one thing to get feedback, but there's another thing to get feedback from people who actually have a bag for you, possibly waiting when you're done. And the other thing, we talked about this earlier, that I like about pitch competitions when I've observed them, you have the ability to watch other people pitch.
Right.
So as you're watching them pitch, you can pick up on things that they're doing that can be helpful, or things that they're doing that might not be that great that you don't want to do when you go up and start pitching. And so it's kind of like this 3D experience. It's like your piece in it, but then you're watching other people as well. And all of these things are going to have you walk out stronger.
I agree, man, 100%. But once you get ready, you got that business plan, you go into a pitch competition. Listen, if you don't have your numbers in order, then what?
This is serious. So know your numbers. What do we mean by that? So we talked a little bit earlier about how when people go on Shark Tank, for example, one of the main things that they talk about on Shark Tank is they start talking about costs. What are your startup costs? What is the cost for you to produce the product that you're up here pitching? As an investor, one of the things you want to talk about always is going to come up is the payback period. So what is the period of time that I'm going to get paid back? Your break-even point. So you're doing business, you're spending cash. At a certain point, you hope that you're going to break even. And then you think about the gross profit, right? And so these are just a few examples of numbers that you're going to be expected to actually know. So we're talking about concepts, but if you were in front of an investor, they want to actually know, what is the actual startup cost? What is the number? Is it 100,000, 75,000? What is it? And so at that point, you would need to know what those numbers are and be able to articulate them to the investor.
Hey, listen, man, I work with a lot of folks. You work with a lot of folks. There are a lot of folks that are truly intimidated by these numbers, man. I know a lot of folks. They've been in business for a number of years, and they can't tell you anything about these numbers. But this conversation is for the folks. We're not here to try to convince you about anything. We're not here to motivate you to be this exceptional business owner that is trying to attract investors. Our job here is to talk to folks who are serious about their business and want to know how to think about the next level of their business, which leads to your exit, right? But you can't get to an exit until you start to really own your numbers, your ratios. We didn't even get into burn rate. We didn't get into churn. We didn't get into cash flow. We're just talking about basics. ROI, ROS, what's the date that I'm going to get my money back? And do you find that it's also true that investors aren't going to wait 3-5 years for their money? There's this window of 12 to 24 months, maybe. What's your take on that as well?
Yeah, I definitely agree. So, most investors are not looking to lock up their money for years on end. There definitely is an expectation that they're going to be able to receive their return on investment relatively quickly. And the reason why is because you start looking at things like inflation and opportunity costs. They're just trying to make sure that they're making the best use of those funds at all times. And so being able to speak to those numbers and attach those time frames to those numbers is going to be extremely important. And not only important, it's going to be expected. When you're telling, it'll be actually we talked earlier about telling the business plan. That is something that should have been fleshed out in the business plan. And now you're ready to present, here are the numbers to your investor.
And you got to be confident. I think, one of the things that you could use, let's call it a hack that you could use, if you're still, although you may have gotten your numbers together in your plan, and if you have a solid team and you're pitching or you're in front of an investor, take your financial advisor with you. And then when you're asked those tough questions, just say, hey, I'm going to let Eric take over right here. Eric, go ahead and address these questions. That's not a terrible thing. That actually shows your intellectual IQ, your entrepreneurial IQ, and shows that you have a team that is also competent and on top of it, just as you are as the CEO or founder.
No question. I couldn't agree more. And we talked about this earlier. At the end of the day, we're trying to make this business as attractive as possible. Right? We all go outside every day. We got our little jackets on, our hat and everything. We're trying to look attractive. We're trying to look good. But we got to continue to translate that into our business. So yes, the deeper your bench, the more professionals you're able to bring to the table, like you made a great point. Yes, it's great to have Eric there as your CFO or financial advisor, but to have him step in and actually have the conversation on your behalf, it shows that you actually have a team, and that is extremely attractive to an investor.
Right. Investors are just not going to invest in somebody who has ideas in their head and have an idea of who would be on their team, but can't have anyone actually show up. That's not what's going to be attractive. We're talking about the 10 ways to attract investors, and not only having a strong team, but making sure that your numbers are in order and you know what you're talking about. And then, of course, last on your top 10, maybe not least, but it's a very strong list here, is being able to talk about the profits of your business. So I'm going to turn that over to you right now. Tell us about number 10.
Yeah, last but definitely not least. So thinking about this from an investor's perspective, investing profits back into the business, you want to talk about something being attractive, very attractive from an investor's point of view, because the alternative is so think about it. We're in the business, we're making money, we have some profits, and we take the profits and pull them out of the business and we go buy a Lamborghini, for example, right? That's not very attractive. Keeping the money inside the business from an investment perspective, what we're looking at in that context is that actually can speed up the growth of the company. It's a more efficient use of capital, and it actually keeps the company going. You know, as we know, in the early years, there's not as much cash as you would like a lot of times. And so keeping the company going without having to continuously going out looking for additional capital is something you could accomplish by keeping the profits in the business. Now, we had talked, Scott, a little bit earlier about if I'm an investor, one of the things that I'm looking at also is if Scott has additional revenue streams outside of this particular business, I really would appreciate that. So say you're a landlord and you're getting rents from your various properties and you don't necessarily need to pay yourself an income from this business. That's extremely important to me versus someone who they really need to start drawing an income from this business sooner than later.
Right.
That can be a red flag to an investor, or just not as attractive as someone who has other revenue streams out there.
Yeah, we did talk about that earlier. And, you know, I have been both. I have been the business owner who has had to beg my clients, which are other businesses, to pay an invoice. That's not attractive to an investor. But you talked about, even in your business, being able to say, hey, when you're secure financially in your own business and you have other streams of revenue, if you don't want to do business with me today, that's fine. You know, here's my card. I'll be available when you're ready. Or just to say, hey, pay when you can. It's okay. It sends a different message.
Right.
And investors tend to side with the folks who are a little bit more financially secure than those who just need the dollars from their business immediately, as you've already stated. And so I think it's just a very, very good point, man.
And I want to bring this up. You know, I kind of learned this from selling insurance years ago. And I would see how if I was in front of a client and my bank account was okay, you know, people can smell things. So they can smell fear, they can smell desperation. And so when I was in a good financial position, they could smell the fact that it didn't matter if they moved forward with the policy today, I was going to be okay. And that actually helped me a lot because they knew that I wasn't there because I was trying to pay my rent tomorrow or my mortgage. I was really there because I cared about the mission of helping that family. And so it's the same thing with an investor. They want to know that you're there because you believe in this company, you can get it to the next level, and not because you need to generate some money quickly to pay your rent or your car note.
That's strong, man. That's strong. And that's a very good tip that we can use as business owners as we're starting our business, and especially for those of us who are looking to attract investors. We definitely ought to think about having additional streams of revenue that will sustain us those 3 to 5 to 7 years before our business turns a profit, which is hard, but doable. Hard, but doable. So this is not to distract anyone. This is to let you guys know this is what you need to do if you want to attract investors. Here are 10 ways to make your business attractive to investors. So, Eric, I want to give you kind of the final word. Let folks know where they can hit you up and get in touch with you. And so any final words that you have for folks who are looking to attract investors in their startup?
Well, Scott, first, I want to thank you for having me on today. This has been a great conversation. It's been a conversation that I've had with many people. It's great to have it in this format. And I just want to encourage everybody out there who's an entrepreneur or business owner to just continue to think about this concept of leverage and just continuously finding ways to, leverage other resources outside of your own and things within your own domain so that you can continue to build generational wealth. That is the spirit in which Hubris was created, my company. And we want you to continue to see us as someone you can partner with to achieve generational wealth. Our tagline is leverage our audacity, achieve wealth. I think initially sometimes when people see that our in leverage our, they're thinking that we're saying leverage our audacity, just hubris in and of itself. But what we're really saying is together. So hubris, as well as us partnering with our client, that hour. Once we bring that collective hour together, it makes it easier to build and sustain generational wealth. And so we look forward to partnering with you all in that. We're on all the social media networks, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Again, my name is Eric McLeod, so I'm pretty easy to find. We got the email up there, and the website is hubriswealth.us, and you can give us a call as well, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Eric, it has been a pleasure to have you in the Business Blueprint 2.0 today. To everybody who is listening, watching, paying attention, Eric is the financial whisperer. Like you've heard of horse whisperers, you've heard of tiger whisperers. When it comes to your numbers and your wealth generation, financial prowess, and responsibility for your business, I definitely strongly recommend Mr. Eric McLeod, founder and CEO of Hubris Global Wealth Management. Again, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it, and it's invaluable, man. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it, Scott.
All right, everybody, you know what to do. If you have any questions, you are in the Business Blueprint 2.0, or even if you're not, and you find this video, hit Eric up. He is the guy. If it's not Eric, get somebody to help you with your finances in your business, in your personal life, in your business, to take your business to the next level. This was 10 ways to attract investors to your startup in the Business Blueprint 2.0. You know what it is. Until next time.
Peace.